Welcome back to another episode of We Don't Know What to Watch, the podcast where two guys have opinions about things on the internet. Can you imagine about that? That's not descriptive at all. Anyway, with me as always is the amazing, the incredible, the King Kong to my Godzilla, Kyle Mulford, and I'm Noah Saturn. How you doing, Kyle?
I have no opinion on that. I'm doing all right. You know, as well as you can be in this crazy world.
So we're back for another mini episode, which means we talk about movies miniature, and we watched a lot of movies since the last time we recorded, so we're just probably going to pick out our top 5 each, and you can go ahead and go first, Kyle.
All right, well, in past episodes, I have mentioned the Tremors series that I've been watching with my daughter. We finally got around to watching the final film, Tremors, A Cold Day in Hell. And all I got to say is I actually liked the last two that were made, and this one was made in 2018. And the last two brought in, Jamie Kennedy as the son of Michael Gross in the show. And I don't know. I liked these last two, and I kind of hope that they continue on with this. So I think they're still all streaming on Netflix. So it's a fun series. And the movies got a little stronger in the end again. Nothing quite as good as the first movie, but they were pretty good. Another movie I'd like to just want to mention is on Prime right now is Rocketman. I think I've mentioned it in another podcast before, so I'm not going to say much about it other than it's just fantastic. It's one of my favorite movies of last year. And,
I still haven't seen it, and now I don't really have an excuse since I'm not doing anything.
I don't even really rewatch movies that often, and I've seen this one twice now. So
it's a ringing endorsement then.
Yeah. I revisited a movie called Stay Tuned with Jeffrey Jones and John Ritter.
Okay.
John Ritter gets suckered by the devil into the devil Jeffrey Jones into buying like this huge entertainment like dish and giant TVs and all this stuff. It's from like 1992, and he gets sucked into it. There's just a lot of like old TV references and stuff, and I still get a kick out of it because of the references. But I watched it with the girls, and actually the whole family watched it, and they still enjoyed it. But there's a lot of references that are like, it's just like I don't get that.
Yeah.
Another one I revisited that was the Beastmaster, which I watched a lot as a kid with Mark Singer and Rip Torn, and that one's streaming on Prime right now. So if you're in the age range like me, about in your early 40s, then you probably grew up with this movie. And if you did, it's on Prime. Go watch it again. It's still a fun movie.
I can't say I ever watched that one or Stay Tuned.
I watched a classic that after watching it, I don't know if I've ever seen it all the way through before, but I've seen most of it in bits and pieces, was Raging Bull.
Nice.
And I have to say, it's good. I mean, most people claim this is Martin Scorsese's like masterpiece. I thought it's good. I don't know what else to say about it besides that. And maybe if anybody listens to this episode, they'll rip me a new one for being kind of meh on it. But there you go.
I think what really makes that one work, at least for me when I saw it, was, of course, Thelma Schoonmaker's editing. She works a lot with Scorsese, and I think that's what really makes the film stand out. I think, and also the stark black and white almost makes it feels like you're watching an old fight on TV or something.
Yeah, and a lot of that worked for me too. I think it's that same problem that you have to walk this line with Scorsese movies that like sometimes I can't walk it with him, where most of his movies you're following an asshole. And like in this one, you're following him. He's a boxer who beats up his girlfriends and wives, and gets and is an asshole to his brother, and just ends up being a schlocky joke meister in clubs. I'm like, what? I mean, why do we care about this guy really? I didn't know why. So
I guess it's supposed to say, a guy who did have some amount of talent, but then of course he was brought down by his own demons, and how his violence, and once you sort of do violence for a job, that's kind of thinks to be like the solution to everything.
Yeah.
Situations.
It's good performances, and I mean at the time, Joe Pesci was not even really known. I think this was one of his first big roles.
I
So
forget if he. I'm not sure. I don't remember if he was in Mean Streets or not.
I don't know. I haven't
Yeah,
seen
I
Mean
haven't.
Streets
I haven't
before.
seen that one either.
So yeah, like I said, if anybody listens to this that loves film, they're probably going to rip me a new one for not caring too much about Raging Bull. But what are you going to do?
That's okay. You can still appreciate it. You may not necessarily feel like you want to watch it again.
Oh,
That's fine.
yeah, I appreciate the hell out of it and the filmmaking and all that. So, and here's why, maybe my opinion doesn't matter, because another movie I watched was 1988's Return of the Killer Tomatoes. And
Wow,
I had
not even Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, the second one.
the second one, and I had a blast with this one. I loved young George Clooney is in this as the sleazy best friend of the main character. And
Nice.
and this movie has the hands down best product placements in a movie ever. So it's streaming on Prime right now, and it is 80s cheesy fun with John Aston as the mad scientist bad guy,
Nice.
and and a young George Clooney in there, and a little fuzzy tomato dog thing, and and really great product placement. So this is a fun watch. I would recommend it.
I don't know, man. The best product placement for me definitely has to be Wayne's World with the product placement scene.
Okay, that was, where was it that was like they had to do the product place? Was that the one where they had to do the product placement because of the show?
No, it's just like it's like, no, I will not bow down to corporate sponsors. And then as he's like showing all these products, and then Garth is dressed out in like this Adidas tracksuit. It's like, yeah, it's like some people just do stuff for the money, and that's just sad.
They might have gotten their inspiration from this movie, because the great thing about this is there is a scene where they're like a quarter to halfway through the movie, and all of a sudden the director just yells cut, and it pans over to like the whole crew and everything. He goes, guys, we found out we don't have enough money to finish this movie. And they're like, I don't know what to do. They're not going to give us any more money. And someone goes, hey, have you thought about doing product placement? It's like this new thing that they're doing in movies. And I think this was early in the product placement like timeline when they really started doing this. And so for the rest of the movie, every time they're talking, they just turn to the camera and just like spout taglines from whatever they're drinking or eating or whatever. And it just gets bigger and bigger until like they get on like these Honda 4-wheelers, and they're talking about like the deal, buying them from the dealership and what kind of Hondas they are and all this stuff. And like, seriously, do we have enough money yet? Can we just like do the movie? And then they pan over to the director. He's just surrounded by women. He goes, yeah, go ahead. And that's not really a spoiler for the joke, because you've got to see it to just see the whole running gag with it. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
And then one last film I want to talk about is from 2017, streaming on Hulu right now. I watched Anna and the Apocalypse. I don't know if you've heard of this one.
Is the Apocalypse the name of like her dog or something?
No, this is a zombie movie, a Christmas movie, and a musical all wrapped in one.
Nice.
And I went into it knowing exactly what it was, and it was like I knew the music was either going to make or break the movie for me, because I've seen some musical horrors that like the music is just not that great, so I didn't really care for the movie. And this one, I really dug the songs in it, and so I kind of liked this one, and I would recommend it for anyone who's a fan of musical zombie Christmas movies.
That beloved subgenre.
Yeah, if that's your cup of tea, it's streaming on Hulu. Oh, I'm sorry. There is one other one that I have to mention too. I watched The Car from 1977 on Netflix with James Brolin.
Nice.
Have you seen that one?
Jaws on. Yes, I've seen The Car.
Yes. This is the first time I've ever seen it, and I don't know why, because this is right in my wheelhouse. Pun fully intended.
It's just like, what was it, like the trombone guy, or
just a driverless car terrorizing a town until they band together and finally get rid of it. and they destroy it, and then a demon flies up into the sky. Just, the car just attacks people. No one in it. That's all it is. Like you said, it's Jaws on land. But that's streaming on Netflix right now. And the reason I haven't seen it before is because I could never find it. And I think it just recently went onto a streaming service. So should check that one out on Netflix.
Everyone loves the car.
Anyway, that's some of the highlights of what I've seen in the last few weeks here.
Okay, I've got a few highlights, not as much as you, obviously, but here, I'll go through a few of them. I finally saw Parasite.
Oh, what'd you think? I loved that one. It was great.
I loved it too, and everything people said about it was right, and thought it was a good time, and I just still need to work on watching more Korean cinema.
Did you know anything going into the movie?
I knew that it was a Bong Joon-ho movie, and that was about it.
Okay, that's very helpful. So you don't actually want to say much because I saw this one at the theater, and you know those places where you go with a bunch of people to see a movie?
I don't remember those.
But I knew basically the same as you, that it was a Bong Joon-ho film, and that's it. I didn't know what to expect from it, and I think that's the best way to go into that movie.
Yep, probably most of his movies when you think about it.
Yeah, that's true. What else do you got for us?
I got Hopscotch, which is a like late 70s, early 80s comedy where Martin Landau plays like a spy who's just kind of getting shuttered to desk duty. So then he's like, screw this, I'm going to write a book and expose everything. So then like he writes this book chapter by chapter, and then he's like mailing this book out to all the intelligence agencies around the world. So they're after him, but then he's always one step ahead. It almost feels like a parody of like a James Bond movie because he's just like, it's really goofy and very silly.
That's awesome. I'm gonna have to put that on my list.
Next,
I like spy parodies.
Yep. Next is Man with a Movie Camera, and this is this really weird kind of experimental art film that came out of like the Soviet era and like the 19-teens, and it really is just sort of all about pushing the limits of what you can do with the camera. So pretty cool in effects. Some stuff I still don't understand how they did, even though it was made so long ago. So if you if you want more interesting stuff, definitely silent films, and just like you could rip off this movie's editing and for your entire career, and people think it'd be amazing.
What else in I'm pretty sure that I had to watch that for one of my film classes in college. I don't remember which scenes are in that I might know. Is it a narrative feature?
No.
That I didn't think so. I thought it was more just, like you said, someone working with a camera and showing what you can do.
Yeah.
A little film history for you, huh?
Yep. And I'm going to work through these two quickly because I've seen them before and I've talked about them before. I got these as gifts for my birthday. I got Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of one Harley Quinn and Knives Out. I watched those recently with my sister who had never seen either of them, and she really enjoyed them, and it was great to see them again.
You know, I watched Birds of Prey a second time because I went out and bought that because I buy all the DC movies. Yeah, I know. They're inferior to Marvel, but I'm a DC guy. And so I bought that one, and
Nerd.
Watching it a second time, I actually enjoyed it even more.
Oh, agreed.
So, yeah, Ewan McGregor. I just love it. Love him in that. Is that a snot bubble? Ew. Changed my mind. Take it off.
Yeah. I also really like the scene where like they have to go down that slide into the fun house, and then Huntress kind of grabs a bad guy and then starts stabbing him all the way down. So by the end, it's just like they just call, yeah, it's like, you are so cool. And I also really like the scene. It's just a really nice touch when they're all fighting, doing this thing, and then like I think what Harley gives Black Canary, a hair tie. Just like it's something you would never see in an action movie because it's something, if it was a man directing, you just wouldn't think about it.
Yeah, there are nice little touches like that, and I think that was pretty clever to put that in there too. Like, I agree with the woman director, you get a lot of little touches like that, where there's also another one where one of the other women is like, when did she have time to change into roller skates?
Exactly. So it's just,
It is so much fun, and like I said, I liked it even more the second time, so that one will
Yep.
get repeat viewings from me.
A lot of fun. Really enjoyed it. I just hope that I hope that we can maybe hopefully either get a second one or at least get more fun stuff from that director Kathy Yan and just that whole group because I think Kathy Yan has a really nice eye just for the action was done well. I know she worked like the second unit director also did a lot of stuff with the John Wick movie, so
Oh,
I think
okay.
that helps a lot with the action. But I hope we just get to see more stuff from her. And I like she hasn't made like one other film, but it's like literally impossible to find.
Huh.
So that's a bummer. I wish I could find that at least somehow, even if
Yeah,
it's like a
I'd be interested to see more by her.
yep.
Your other movie that you mentioned, I do want to mention. You said you got that movie, but for our listeners out there, I'd like to mention that that's actually on Amazon Prime now.
Yep.
Although, if you have Prime, you know it's on there because every time you turn on Prime, it's just like boom, Knives Out. So, but I'd highly recommend watching that one. I am
Yep.
looking forward to a second viewing of that one too.
It's
It's
a
on.
very loving homage to the Who Done It. And if you're like me, where you really, really, really love whodunits and kind of grew up on them, go reading a lot of like Sherlock Holmes stories and then Agatha Christie books. So it
It
definitely
really
comes from that school.
it really made me want to revisit a couple of Ryan Johnson's earlier films like Brick and Looper and all that. Like you realize just because he wrote the script too, and I'm like,
Yes.
that's a really clever script.
It's very tight and it was definitely nominated for an Oscar for a good reason.
Yeah, it just yeah, I agree with you. Very tight script and it kept you guessing and nothing there wasn't anything in there that didn't make sense. The only thing I would say would be a stretch was the throwing up, but like it was worked in there so well that it actually enhanced the movie.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't necessarily need to make sense, but as a plot device, I think it works really well. It can make some fun interactions between Marta and Benoit Blanc.
Yeah.
And supposedly, from what I've heard, they're working on another Benoit Blanc mystery, and I'd like to see more of him and all the other weird things he comes across, because that's what kind of makes these mysteries fun. It's less about the plot and the mystery itself, and more about like the weird characters that you meet all the way as you follow this kind of detective.
Yeah, which is exactly what you want from your old murder mysteries like your Agatha Christie stuff and Miss Marple and Hercule Poirot and all that
Murder
stuff.
She Wrote. I've been watching a lot of Murder She Wrote because I'm a grandma.
I used to watch a lot of Murder with She Wrote with my grandma.
Nice.
So yeah, I am all in on Daniel Craig moving on from Bond and becoming Benoit Blanc for the foreseeable future.
With his amazing Southern accent.
Yes, the Foghorn Leghorn accent.
Yes.
So
And I got two more that I think are worth mentioning. This one is Word is Out, Some of Our Stories. It's a documentary about, and it's just like a bunch of filmmakers talking to queer people in the 1970s. So I think it's a really interesting sort of piece of history about there because it was in like 77. So it's just kind of like right before the AIDS epidemic hit, but then while sort of the gay rights and gay liberation movement was still going on. So it's kind of, and they talk to a wide variety of people. So there are some like common, but everyone has a sort of interesting, unique experience. So if you want history and just a part of history that honestly I never learned about in school, which would be, I think that's a really valuable film.
yeah, that would be. And you know what I like is in the last few years I've noticed a lot of stories are coming out that should have been taught in history class that people are finally like learning and saying, "Hey, we need to learn this stuff." So that's great. I might have to watch that one.
And some of the people who actually were behind this was a group of six filmmakers that are called this film's the Mariposa Collective. A lot of them actually went on to do great stuff in documentaries, and Robert Epstein is one of them, and he's still active today.
Oh, cool.
And last one was a movie that was like at the bottom of my to watch list because I finally it was Dave Made a Maze from 2017 or 2018, I believe. It's a goofy independent film about a guy who, while his girlfriend's on like a work trip and gone for the weekend, he makes like a giant maze out of like cardboard, but on the outside it looks just like a goofy cardboard fort you'd build like you were a kid, but on the inside it's like this incredible labyrinth. It's even got its own minotaur. But then all the sets and everything are made of like cardboard and just like regular craft supplies. So it's pretty silly. And then like even when like someone like dies or they get cut up by like these cardboard saws, like their blood is actually just like red yarn. It's just bizarre and gets weirder and sillier as it goes on.
That sounds really fun. Did you enjoy it a lot?
Yeah, I had a good time. It's pretty weird and quirky, so if you like that sort of thing, that's how I'd recommend it for. And also, there's like a documentary film crew who's supposed to like following them around as they go and try and find Dave because he got lost in this labyrinth that he built. And then the director is played by the guy who is like the voice of Dr. Venture from the Venture Brothers. So, and he's really good at just kind of this weird. She was like, "All right, guys, here, talk to this again, do it again," because he's trying to make a documentary about this bizarre experience.
That one sounds kind of fun. I might have to look for that one.
I think that one is on Amazon Prime.
Oh, cool. I'll look that up.
And yeah, those are kind of my highlights. You went through your highlights. So what do you think is next on the docket for you before we go?
On my real good list that is ever growing, and sometimes some of these movies you tell me about I throw on there too, but the next one I'm watching is called The Proposition with Guy Pearce. So we'll see what that one's like.
I thought it was like The Proposal with Ryan Reynolds and Sandra Bullock, which is actually pretty good.
And with Betty White, and that is great. So
yeah.
No, I think it might be an Australian Western, possibly, or something like that. But like, I think it's a guy is asked to kill his own brother in order to be like he's got another one of the sheriff has one of his brothers. He says, "I'm going to hang your brother if you don't go kill your other brother for us."
Oh, no.
Yeah, there's something like that. I could have that wrong because, like I said, I haven't watched the movie yet, but it's some weird deal like that. So
I assume he looks at the camera and says, "Oh, brother, where art thou?" and then starts off his journey.
Yes, and then they run into John Goodman, the Cyclops, with an eye patch.
Yeah, for me, I still have. I mean, it's we're recording this at the beginning of July, so that means that this month is the like twice a year sale of Criterion Collection Blu-rays at Barnes and Noble. They do it every July and December, so that means I'm probably gonna buy a few, and that also means I still have like a bunch of those that I haven't watched that are still in shrink. I'm terrible.
Yeah, well,
So I should definitely work through some of those.
I always have stuff to recommend on streaming because, honestly, not afraid to admit, I'm too cheap to buy crap. But you know what? I'm paying for a bunch of these streaming services, so...
It's actually, if you look at the long run, it's cheaper to buy it because then it doesn't cost you whatever bucks a month. So let's say if it's like $5 a month for this like service, and if you buy a movie once, it's like $20 or whatever for like a.
Well,
so you only have to pay that $20 once instead of like paying it over and over and over.
And unless you're like me and you watch like anywhere from 20 to 30 new to you movies a month, so
yeah, I guess you're getting your money's worth, probably more than the average person.
Oh, I get my money's worth out of all these streaming services, believe you me. As you can tell with it, like I only did my highlights. I watched probably in the last 3 weeks all of the movies I just went through. I probably watched one more for every one of those movies.
Nice.
So, but yeah. So anyway, that's I think that's our show for today. Find us on Twitter. I'm at AwesomeKM.
And I'm at Noah_Saturn, SATERN.
And like our podcast and whatnot, and subscribe and all that good stuff.
Yep, and hopefully you'll stick around and join us later when we have another full episode.
Yeah, comment below. Let us know what you've been watching. And until then, keep watching.
Until then, it's like a donut, and we got to find the donut hole. But then I realized that the donut hole is actually just another donut with its own hole. So we got to find the donut hole that goes in the mini donut that goes in the big donut.
I'm so confused right now.
Oh, it's from Knives Out. It's really good.
And hungry.
Yes. All right. Bye-bye.